Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Roxanne Clay, and I am with the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office and the director of the WVABLE Savings Program. And for those of you that are not familiar with WVABLE, it is a savings and investment account program. We're actually a sister program to the Smart 529 savings here that's also administered by the State Treasurer's Office. But where WVABLE is different, it offers savings and investment opportunities that are designed specifically for individuals with disabilities. It allows them and their families to save and invest without it jeopardizing their eligibility for federal benefit programs. This includes Supplemental Security Income, SSI, Medicaid, SNAP, and HUD. So throughout the next hour, you are going to hear me say WVABLE, able, and stable. So essentially, they're all the same. WVABLE is West Virginia's ABLE plan. ABLE is referring to the federal legislation that makes WVABLE possible, and stable refers to the name of the account that the West Virginia individual will enroll. It is also the name of the program manager administrator that handles the online account platform and also handles all the daily transactions for stable account. So for today's webinar, I'm really excited to share. We have a lot of new updates to talk about for 2026. Of course, we are going to include more about why WVABLE is important. We're going to talk about eligibility and then the expansion to who qualifies in 2026. We're going to talk about the new stable account program incentives, which provides new savings opportunities. We're going to cover the new contribution limits that have been set for 2026, enrollment, and how the accounts work as far as how to make contributions, how to make withdrawals. We'll talk about additional features that are included within the stable account platform that make saving and using the accounts easy and more efficient. And then, of course, what the funds in the accounts can be used for. We will also cover some special considerations about saving with WVABLE. So first, I want to recognize that WVABLE has an advisory board, and as you can see on the slide, it is made up of numerous organizations and entities, some of which you're going to recognize, that serve and or advocate for people with disabilities. Many of the organizations that are included on the slide are representative of the WVABLE Advisory Board. Now, they each play a critical role in informing individuals around the state about the program. They also report updates in their areas of expertise. They host WVABLE presentations, just like the one today, and they provide guidance and insight for promoting WVABLE programs. So we couldn't do this without their help. And then on this slide, I want to be sure that you are familiar with WVABLE.com website. If you have an additional monitor or a smartphone, feel free to bring that up, WVABLE.com. This is the hub where everything takes place. It's where folks go to actually open an account. It's where they go to log into an existing account. And throughout the next hour, you're going to hear me reference several of the pages on our website, including the resources tab, where you're going to find a list of all stable account related forums. You can take a deeper dive into the information that we share about the benefits for the accounts, how the accounts work as far as making contributions, and then of course qualified disability expenses. And then we have an FAQ page as well. You're going to hear me talk about this page throughout, but I want to mention that if you were to go out and actually Google WVABLE, it is possible that our website does not come up first. We have other national ABLE programs that have paid a lot of marketing dollars for their website to show up first in a search results. And we have had West Virginia residents unknowingly, they click on that page, they think it's West Virginia's ABLE plan, and then they go to enroll. And the problem is there are certain protections and benefits that our West Virginia legislature put in place for the West Virginia resident and West Virginia taxpayer that owns and or contributes into a WVABLE account that they're going to miss out on by enrolling and owning an out-of-state 529 program. So we're going to talk more about that and the benefits in an upcoming slide, but I just wanted to make clear that there is a difference. You know, WVABLE.com is West Virginia's ABLE plan and program. Now, when we talk more about what WVABLE is, so it is made possible by federal legislation called the ABLE Act that was passed in 2014. Now, this bill had the most bipartisan support of any bill that was passed by Congress. It is included in the Internal Revenue Code as a new section, 529A. So what the bill did is it created savings and investment accounts specifically for individuals with disabilities. So money that is deposited in the account does not affect eligibility for public benefit programs, including SSI and Medicaid. So that is at the core of what the ABLE Act did. Now, the ABLE Act, it also gave states the mechanism to create their own savings or ABLE programs. And most ABLE programs are administered through their state treasurer's office. Now, the ABLE Act does not mandate that states have a program, so we do feel fortunate to have our ABLE program here in West Virginia. Our program launched February 9th of 2018, so we're actually getting ready to celebrate our 8th anniversary. Now, when we talk more about what ABLE is, know that ABLE accounts have hybrid functionality and that they're very similar to these financial products that you see on the slide here. So they're very similar to a 529 college savings account program, which now we refer to them as education savings. And our program in West Virginia is the Smart 529, also administered by the state treasurer's office. But where WVABLE is different, well, first of all, let me back up. They're both managed online. You know, with WVABLE, you go to WVABLE.com and then you're enrolling in a stable account. There's not really a physical bank that you're going to go to open an account. Both programs offer savings and investment options. And the benefit too for both is that the earnings from the investments, they grow tax-free as long as the funds are spent on what the accounts were intended for. So for WVABLE, and this is new as of 2019, our West Virginia legislature put in place this benefit in that when the West Virginia taxpayer contributes into WVABLE, they may take an income state tax deduction for that contribution. So what that's doing is leveling the playing field that has been offered to the Smart 529 contributions. Now it's also in place for individuals contributing to a WVABLE savings account. That's a really important update. We want to make sure that folks know that piece. And also, this is one of those benefits that I talked about for the taxpayer that our West Virginia legislature put in place. And then, of course, it's the benefit exclusively for the taxpayer that contributes into WVABLE. Now, where WVABLE is different than the 529 college savings is that college savings program is a little bit more restrictive in that it's intended for education-related expenses, okay? Where WVABLE expenses can be used, they can be used now or in the future, really at any time, to pay for any expense that supports the beneficiary, the account owner, the individual with a disability. And we're going to talk more about that in an upcoming slide. Note too that ABLE accounts have the functionality of a checking account in that you have relatively immediate access to your funds, and it has those transactional capabilities. And again, the funds can be used for a broad range of disability expenses that occur now or in the future. And then also ABLE accounts have the functionality of a special needs trust. So before the ABLE Act, okay, a special needs trust was the only way to shelter assets above $2,000. However, special needs trust requires an experienced lawyer to establish, and they can be costly. When we talk more about what WVABLE is, of course, it's West Virginia's ABLE plan. It is administered by the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office. And again, our program launched almost 8 years ago, and we will be celebrating. I'll talk more about that in our last slide. Our WVABLE program, it is offered to the West Virginia resident through a partnership with the Ohio Stable program. So that's where the word stable comes in. Know that Ohio was the first state in the nation to develop their stable program back in 2016. So they invested a lot of money and resources into developing their plan. And once it was established, they opened it up and invited other states to partner. So stable is a national plan. It's a partnership model. There are currently 13 states that make up the stable account plan. Some other neighboring and close by states include Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina. Know that West Virginia saved a lot of money by partnering with Ohio. And know this too, that stable is a national plan. So if the West Virginia individual enrolls in WVABLE, they own a stable account. If they were to move out of state, that plan will automatically follow them. The only thing they need to do is update their address and contact information. They still have access, to logging into their account with the same credentials, and they still have access to their stable Visa card. It's good to know that stable is one of the most widely used national programs. So we feel very fortunate to be part of the stable account plan. So when we talk about additional benefits of a stable account, know that the account is owned by the individual with a disability, okay? That is where it's different from the 529 education savings. With that plan, the owner is the account creator, and they can have multiple accounts. With WVABLE, the account is owned by the individual with a disability, regardless of who actually establishes the account and who might be managing it. And then the individual with a disability can have only one ABLE account. Additional benefits of owning a WVABLE stable account is it's providing financial independence for individuals with disabilities. It provides them new investment opportunities they didn't have before. Again, this is savings and investment. Savings in which you can finally save above that $2,000 without being at risk for losing benefits, but then investment opportunities where the funds can be used towards investment options where the earnings grow. And then we'll talk here next is that the earnings grow tax-free. Individuals, they're avoiding that routine spend down to stay below the $2,000 asset limit that is set by Social Security and Medicaid. I get those calls a lot, especially from a REP payee who are managing funds on behalf of a beneficiary. They're routinely spending down to stay below the $2,000 asset limit. Now they no longer have to. They can establish a stable account for that individual, and they can move those excess funds over and just allow those funds to build in that stable account. They can save for an emergency fund. They can save for the long term. They can use these accounts more routinely to pay for everyday living expenses. And so that is the beauty of an ABLE account, is we have so many different individuals with differing circumstances and different goals for their accounts, and the purpose and what you can use the accounts for accommodates all those individuals. We know that parents, they worry what is going to happen to their child after they pass. What is going to take care of that child financially for the long term. So WVABLE accounts are providing that financial peace of mind. It's allowing parents to start building a nest egg for their child to pay for expenses that certainly occur now, but then also to ensure that the child will be taken care of financially for the long term. And then ABLE accounts provide tax benefits. As mentioned earlier, ABLE is included in the tax code as a new section 529A. So it's certainly providing some tax benefits. And as mentioned, this is a savings and investment plan. And then the earnings from those investments, they grow tax-free. That is a huge benefit for ABLE accounts and for individuals with disabilities. Know that those earnings remain tax-free as long as ABLE funds are spent on what's called qualified disability expenses. You've heard me refer to that already. We have a slide where I'll go into that into more detail, but essentially it's any expense that supports the account owner, the individual with a disability. Additional tax benefits, and this is specific to the West Virginia taxpayer that contributes into a WVABLE account. They may take an income state tax deduction for the amount that they contribute into WVABLE. Additionally, there's what's called the Savers Credit. This is an IRS tax credit, also known as a retirement savings contribution credit. It's a non-refundable tax credit for contributions made into a retirement plan, like a 401k, a 403b, or other employer-sponsored retirement plans. And what the IRS has done is they have included ABLE accounts contributions that may qualify for the Savers Credit. And this would, of course, be contributions made by the account owner who is working. So the maximum amount that qualifies is $1,100 for the year of 2026. So that amount has actually went up from last year. There are some stipulations in that you do have to, the account owner who is working and making these contributions, they have to be at least 18 at the end of the taxable year and not a dependent or a full-time student. And then, of course, there's income requirements that also need to be met. But if you simply Google IRS Savers Credit, you'll find more information about that. Now, when we talk about eligibility, I want to make clear, what the requirement is, because there are some misconceptions that I hear about all the time. So we want to make sure to clear those up. And then we have an important update to the eligibility criteria that went into effect January 1 that we're super excited to share about. First of all, we do have an eligibility quiz at our website at the WVABLE.com and then eligible tab. And you're going to see a button for a quiz that includes some yes or no questions that will tell the individual if they are eligible to enroll and own an ABLE account. Sometimes folks run into roadblocks, so I always like to say, be sure to read the information that's included at the page, okay? And what you're going to find is, first of all, you do have to be a West Virginia resident, okay? And then the onset of the disability must have occurred prior to the age of 46, okay? Now, for those of you that are familiar with WVABLE, ever since the ABLE Act was established, the eligibility requirement, the age of onset, has always been before age 26. So now I'm excited to report that as of January 1, as a result of the ABLE Age Adjustment Act, okay, that age of onset increases to before age 46. This is allowing an additional 6 million individuals nationwide who are now eligible for an ABLE account because their onset of disability occurred at a later age. So this expansion just marks the largest expansion of ABLE eligibility since the program began. It's opening the door for thousands of newly eligible West Virginians. So we are super excited to share this update with you. Now, to get down to more specifics about the eligibility criteria, and of course the misconceptions, is that the onset of the disability, so this means the onset of the symptoms, not the diagnosis, must have occurred before age 46. And then you don't have to enroll into a stable account before age 46. You can actually enroll at any age, okay? And then one of the following criteria must be met. Either the individual is eligible or entitled to receive SSI or SSDI due to the disability or blindness. Know that more than 50% of our account owners actually fall within this first category. And then know too that when you complete the online enrollment, okay, it's going to ask you which one of these three makes the individual eligible for an ABLE account. So you're basically check marking. So the first criteria here, involves another misconception. We have a lot of folks that think they have to actually be receiving SSI in order to be eligible to enroll in a WVABLE account, and that is not the case. They simply have to be entitled to it due to the disability, okay? So for example, we have families that have a child with a disability, and let's say that they actually applied for that child, okay, for SSI benefits. And of course, Social Security first looks at the family's income and their assets. Of course, they want them to be below 2,000 in assets, and they want them to meet a certain income requirement and not go over that. Well, if the family goes over that, okay, then they're not eligible for SSI benefits. And then they think they're not eligible for ABLE. Well, that is not the case, okay? What families, and then what happens is Social Security doesn't get to the disability determination, okay? They simply stop there and they tell the family they're not eligible for SSI. So another tip is, we have families that then they're going to wait till the child turns 18, then they're going to reapply for Social Security, and then Social Security will look at that 18-year-old child's income and assets. And of course, assets in an ABLE account are disregarded. Okay, we're going to talk about SSI beneficiaries and income limits, or I'm sorry, asset limits here in another slide. But just know that families will enroll in this account, when that child is young, allow those funds to build. And then when the child turns 18, they're applying for SSI. They can have up to 100,000 in their WVABLE account, and Social Security is going to disregard it. Okay, so the takeaway for this first is eligible or entitled to receive SSI or SSDI due to the disability or blindness, but you don't have to be receiving SSI in order to be eligible for ABLE. You simply just have to have a disability that meets Social Security standards for a disability. So if you don't know, okay, then you can go to the next criteria. Does the individual have a condition that's listed on Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances conditions? Okay, so on our website, we actually have this hyperlink. So when you click on it, it takes you to Social Security's website and their list of these conditions. Now, what you're going to find is certain types of cancers and brain disorders that affect adults and children, that you may not have considered to be a disability. But if that condition has lasted or is expected to last for at least a year, then it meets the requirement for the eligibility for an ABLE account, okay? And know that Social Security often updates this list, periodically, so make sure that you're checking back. But then also know that if you don't have a condition that's listed on this list, then you go to the next criteria. And this is what's called self-certification. So what this means is that you have a written diagnosis from a physician of a physical or a mental impairment that causes marked and severe functional limitations, and the condition has lasted or is expected to last for at least a year. So this is the same standard that Social Security uses for SSI and SSDI disability determination, okay? Know that this doctor doesn't have to be the physician that diagnosed you. It can be the current treating physician. And know that it didn't have to be an actual letter that they write. We actually have a form on our website at the resources tab under the stable account list of forms. It's the physician diagnosis form. You're going to print that. You're going to take it to the physician. They're going to complete it. And then you're going to keep it on hand in case it's ever requested. Okay. And then, of course, during the enrollment, you will check mark the box for self-certification, and that's how you are certifying that you meet the requirement for enrolling in a WVABLE account. Okay. When we talk about enrollment, you go to WVABLE.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see the hamburger stack, that then you will see the button for open an account. Once you click on that, it actually takes you to the gateway page for enrolling in a stable account. And remember, stable is the name of the account. It's the national program that is hosted by the state of Ohio Treasurer's Office, in which there are 12 partner states that make up stable. You're going to need an email address, and you'll create a username. And and remember, this is an enrollment. It is not an application in which the individual is approved or denied. You're supplying information for the account beneficiary, the individual with a disability. So they can actually be the one to do the enrollment. Or if it's another individual, that representative completing the enrollment, then they're going to ask questions about that individual as well. And then the second part of the enrollment is making an initial contribution of $25. That is the minimum amount that is required to establish the account. Okay. Now, a new incentive bonus that is offered by Stable Account, and again, this is another one of these updates that I'm excited to share effective January 1. That once that $25 deposit, that initial deposit hits and it's reflective of the balance, then Stable Account is going to match that $25. Okay. So this is just an excellent way for individuals to jumpstart their savings in WVABLE with a Stable Account. This is available long-term, and you can see the terms and conditions for this incentive on our website at WVABLE.com. As far as who can complete the enrollment. So the Federal ABLE Act requires that the person opening the account can be either the individual with a disability, we refer to them as the account holder, or the account beneficiary. Again, during the enrollment, you're going to see that terminology. Account beneficiary is always the individual that owns the account, the individual with a disability, okay? Or if the individual is not able to open or manage their own account, for example, they're a child, or if it's an adult with a disability who simply doesn't want to enroll and manage this independently, they want help, or they may not have the capacity to do so on their own. So the ABLE Act allows for what's called an authorized legal representative, and we refer to them as an ALR. So an ALR is defined by law as one of the following: an agent acting under a power of attorney. Know that this is very specific to the managing the Stable Account, and we do have a form on our website for this agent acting under a power of attorney that you can print and download and keep it in the file. And then of course during the enrollment under the ALR, you would just check mark agent acting under a power of attorney. Okay. Or we have a legal guardian or a conservator that's been approved by the courts, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, or the Social Security rep payee. Okay, so be advised, for the individual that acts as the ALR, they are formally assigned to the individual's account and will be the only person allowed to transact on the account. However, new of 2026, Stable Account has added a feature in which the ALR can add an individual who can help manage the account, and then they're also setting parameters or limitations on what that individual can do within the account, what activity they can do. So no, that's also an update, just a recent update that we're excited to share too. Know too that this ALR is in the order that you see in front of you, that is the order of priority. And then we also have what's called the organizational ALR method. So when you go to WVABLE.com website, you're going to see a tab for organizational ALR that provides more information. This is for organizations who are managing funds on behalf of multiple beneficiaries who are receiving SSI benefits, for example. And so this organizational ALR method has been established by a Stable Account to make the enrollment, but then also the process of managing multiple accounts more efficient. So there's definitely some benefits there. It's a different enrollment in that there's an online registration. There's a tab provided. We provide one-on-one guidance for this type of enrollment. So be sure that if you have any questions at all, that you reach out to me, and I can certainly provide some steps and guidance to make that process more seamless. Okay. And then how do you get funds into the account? So no, there's several ways. So during the time of enrollment, okay, when it's asking for that initial $25 deposit, you can link a current checking or savings account within the stable account platform to make transfers as needed, and including that initial deposit via electronic funds transfer, okay? Or you can log in at any time to then add a external banking or savings account. Know too that you can add more than one account, okay? Or you can mail a check to Stable Program Manager. And so we have a form on our website under the Stable Account, resources tab, and it's the check contribution form. So you would print that, you're going to complete it, you're going to include your check, and then you'll mail it to the address that's included on the form, okay? Obviously, this is going to take longer to process and to reflect the balance of the account. But it's just another convenient way to make a contribution, including if you would choose to have that initial $25 mailed in. We also have the opportunity for folks to set up direct deposit. This includes direct deposit of Social Security benefit payments, okay? Know that it was about 1.5 years ago that Stable Account actually made this method possible. You always want to be mindful, though, that if you are directly depositing Social Security benefit payments into the Stable Account, obviously you want access to those funds to pay for their expenses, and you can certainly do that. That's how Stable Accounts are set up. And let me back up. When you do want to direct deposit Social Security benefits, just be mindful of the maximum contribution per year. So if you're only depositing Social Security benefit payments and it's that, under $1,000 amount, that maximum amount, then you're not going to exceed the annual contribution limit for ABLE accounts. However, if additional funds above the Social Security benefit payments are being deposited, you want to be mindful of that $20,000 maximum contribution limit. We're going to talk about contribution limits in an upcoming slide, but I wanted to mention that as another tip. And you can certainly ask more questions about that during the Q&A or later. Or individuals may set up what's called payroll direct deposit. And this is either for the beneficiary who is working. This can be the ALR, perhaps maybe a parent who wants to make routine contributions from their payroll earnings into their child's Stable account. That is set up within the Stable account platform. Okay, and then we also have what's called the gifting page. This is a very unique but great feature within the Stable account platform that makes gift giving contributions easy and efficient by family and friends. So what happens is when you are logged into the account and on the main page, you're going to see an icon for gifting. And when you click on that, it allows you to set up a gifting page. It kind of compares to a GoFundMe, but you're not paying those fees for the individual who's making a contribution is not paying those GoFundMe fees. It's free to make a contribution. What happens is, whether it's a birthday, a graduation, or a special goal or need, or it's Christmas, you're creating this link and then you're sharing it with family and friends, whether that be on Facebook, okay, or whether that be via email or via text, okay? The recipient is going to click on that and it's going to allow them to make a direct contribution from their account into the Stable account. And remember, the beauty of Stable accounts and at the core is the funds in the account does not count as a resource. So we've had, family members in the past that's always been afraid to give cash money or to give, financial gifts to an individual with a disability that's receiving public benefits because they're afraid it's going to count against that $2,000 asset limit. Well, now they don't have to. The funds go directly into the Stable account. And of course, we know it's a sheltered asset. And also the other beauty is any gift into a Stable account does not count as income for that individual with a disability. So Social Security is not going to count that contribution as an income. That is the other beauty of Stable accounts. So you don't have to worry about that piece. They have increased the features within the gifting page platform in that the giver can actually set up some login credentials so that they can set up recurring gifting, or they can set up to where they can, anytime they want to make a gift, they can use their credentials they've already established for making continued gift contributions. And again, another reminder for the West Virginia taxpayer that makes contributions into a WVABLE stable account, they can track those contribution amounts and they can deduct their taxable income by the amount that they're contributing. Okay? And then, as it relates to how much money can be contributed into the ABLE account, again, funds can come from any source. So when we're talking about this first bucket, okay, if the beneficiary is not employed, the 2026 contribution limit has increased to $20,000 for the year. And again, funds into the stable account can come from any source: family, friends, businesses, an employer, a trust, a legal entity, even rollovers from a 529 education savings, okay? And then if the beneficiary is employed, okay, so for 2026, they may contribute their employment earnings above the $20,000 to equal a total of employment earnings of $15,650, okay? So this would be on top of the $20,000 for a grand total of $35,650, okay? So this $15,650 employment earnings is made possible by the Able to Work Act legislation. But there is one stipulation in that if the account owner who's employed or their employer, if they are contributing to a retirement plan during that same calendar year, like a 401k, for example, then they wouldn't be eligible to make Able to Work contributions in their Able account. Okay, so basically both are offering tax benefits, right? So you can't double dip. You basically have to choose which you want to participate in. Making Able to Work contributions into the Able account that's above the 20,000, or contributing to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. And again, that's for the calendar year. Okay. And then we have what's called the lifetime limit. And for the year of 2026, that amount has increased to $570,000. So know that this amount, and I'll back up a little bit too. So for this first bucket of 20,000, that contribution limit is a hard stop 20,000. Your balance can increase and grow above 20, right? So if you have your funds invested and there's earnings that are causing it to grow, it can grow over 20, but the contribution limit is a hard stop 20. Now, stable account does monitor the contribution limit to help folks not to exceed the $20,000 limit. So for example, if they're at 15,000, and let's say there's a grandmother who mails in a check for $7,000, then stable will deposit the 5,000, but they're going to return the 2,000 to the grandparent. Okay, so they do help in monitoring that. As far as the lifetime limit goes, you can hit the limit and then you spend down, and then you can contribute additional funds to, again, reach that 570. So where do these funds come from as well? There have been some changes at the IRS level, so I'm going to try to keep this part simple in that this lifetime limit, it does actually come from Ohio, since they're the sponsoring state. Their 529 plan lifetime balance limit. So these amounts do change. They've changed for the last 6 years. This first bucket has been increased by $1,000 each year. And then this employed beneficiary piece, Able to Work, that has also increased over the last 6+ years. So just every year be mindful that there are likely going to see some increases. It's based on inflation, and you always want to circle back to WVABLE to learn what those account benefits are. Okay. And we talk about investment options. So when a contribution is made into a WVABLE account, the account beneficiary or the ALR will determine how they want those funds allocated across the options that are included in the plan. Know this, that myself at the state treasurer's office or any other, state treasurer representative, or even stable, okay, customer service, we cannot provide guidance on how you would choose your investment options. However, we do have information on our website. When you go to the How It Works tab and you scroll down, you're going to see these options listed with more descriptive information on how these options, how they're allocated. For example, you have the first option, which is the stable savings option. It used to be called the bank safe option. This is the option that is 100% FDIC insured, in which the principal is protected, okay? Then we have 4 Vanguard mutual fund options that range from aggressive to conservative. So as you see, depending on which option and whether it's the most conservative, you are investing in the stock market and bonds, and so there's risks involved. You definitely have the opportunity for earnings, right? But there's also risk in that you could lose some of your funds. So you definitely, want to look at the bottom of the How It Works tab. There is the word performance, and then you're going to click there to see how these investment options have been performing in the last quarter, in the last year, since the inception of the program, okay? And then also, of course, we recommend to folks that you can certainly seek guidance from your investment advisor. And then know this too, if let's say somebody mails in a check, okay, and it's not been allocated, like how that contribution is going to be allocated across these options, the default will always be the stable savings option, okay? The other beauty of stable accounts is anytime a contribution is made, okay, you don't have to allocate those funds the same method that you have before. You can change it up, okay? And then the IRS allows for 2 times per calendar year to reallocate funds that have already been invested. So that's an IRS rule, but know that that also is an option that is available. Now, how can the funds in the account be used? So you've heard me reference qualified disability expenses, okay? So what is the definition? So the true definition is that the expense must relate to the disability, and it must help to maintain or improve the account beneficiary's health, their independence, and their quality of life. So know that there's actually not a list because they didn't want it to be restrictive. The legislation is just very broad in the interpretation of what qualifies. So this is also an area where we have a lot of misconceptions. We have people that are fearful that they're going to misuse their funds. And I want to try to, provide some peace of mind, because essentially any expense that supports that beneficiary, the individual with a disability, is considered a qualified disability expense. Okay, so I always like to suggest, think of it in terms of what would not qualify. So giving the money away, gambling, tobacco, alcohol use, for example. Some examples, what you see on the slide here are expense categories in which the expenses would fall under. So for example, basic living expenses, food falls under that category. Transportation, this would be the down payment for a vehicle, for adding modifications to a vehicle, for, repairs to the wheels, gasoline, insurance, it includes, of course, education. Sometimes people think that because we're a sister program to the Smart 529, that this account can only be used for education related expenses. And of course, it can be used for education and then all of the rest that you see here. Health and wellness, additionally, like gym membership. Again, it's not just to pay for medical expenses, okay? It's any expense that supports the beneficiary. So here's an example, going to the movies or even going on vacation, right? Because that helps to build the quality of life for that individual. Now, I always like to say, this is an IRS program, so it's to their purview to audit ABLE accounts. So keep receipts, write notes on those receipts. This is the area in which they're going to be most interested because they are offering tax-free earnings on those investments. So they want to know and make sure that folks are using these funds on qualified expenses. And then if the beneficiary is receiving SSI, Social Security will also want to know, how the funds are being used. Now, what is the method in which individuals can make withdrawals and get money out of their account? So know that first of all, there's no fees and there's no limit set on making withdrawals. If you linked a checking or savings account, to make contributions via EFT into the stable account, that's also how you can make a withdrawal, is that you would log in and you check withdrawal, and then you're going to identify which linked account you want those funds to be moved back to. Always allow about 2 to 3 business days for those funds to be transferred, okay? So you always want to plan ahead. And then you can also request for Stable to issue a check on your behalf. They do not charge a fee for this. That's another great feature. The check can be mailed to the ALR, to the beneficiary, or to a third party, okay? And this is a great method because it's automatically keeping a record for how the funds are being spent, okay? And then we have what's called the Stable Visa card. This is a great feature and a tool that allows for access to the funds on a more frequent basis, okay? Know that for the West Virginia resident that owns a WVABLE account, this card is free. It doesn't come automatic. You do have to request it, but there is no charge for you to own and use the Stable Visa card. WVABLE actually picks up the $5 monthly cardholder user fee on behalf of the beneficiary and the person managing the account. But essentially, what happens is when you request the card, it's going to come in, let's say, the ALR's name on behalf of the beneficiary. And then it doesn't automatically pull from the balance in the account. So there's some protections that have been put in place. So you would log into the Stable account, you're going to make a withdrawal, and this card will automatically be linked. So you can choose the card and move the funds there. Again, allow 2 to 3 business days. And this card can actually be used wherever Visa is accepted. Now, if you have an adult beneficiary who you want them to have access to the funds in their Stable account, you can request to receive what's called a companion card. And of course, that card would come in the name of the beneficiary. And then you're going to load that card, with funds that makes, accessing their funds for whatever expenses that they have. This is a great tool in teaching money management skills and just confidence building and using funds independently. And again, there are protections in place in that they can't actually go to an ATM to get cash out, okay? And if they were to go and make a purchase that has more than what is available balance, then that transaction would just be rejected. So there's never going to be overdraft fees. You can actually set up text alerts in which you can receive a text every time that card is swiped. And you can also set up spending parameters to where the card can only be used at, let's say, Walmart, or only be used for food-related items, okay? So it's just a great tool for those individuals that want more frequent access to their funds, and then, of course, to have access to the beneficiary to also use the funds. A new feature for Stable account as of last year, okay, we want to make sure that you know this, is that you can manage your accounts via the Stable mobile app. Now, the Stable app is called Vestwell, okay, because they're the actual overarching that manages the Stable account. So when you're at the home page of WVABLE.com and you scroll to the very bottom, you're going to see the icons for the Apple iOS or the Android, okay, in which you can download the app. and then you're going to use your same login credentials that you use to enroll in your stable account to then download the app and then use the app. So you can't use the app to actually enroll in the account, but once you've enrolled, you're going to download the app, and any transaction, anything that you're doing via the website to manage your account, you can do via the app. And of course, when you're on the go, wherever you're at, you can use the app to manage it. So it's another great feature for managing your account while on the go. For individuals that do receive supplemental security income. Now remember, you don't have to be receiving SSI to enroll and own an ABLE account, okay? But for those that do, or if you're a parent and you plan to have your child when they're 18 to apply for SSI, you want to be mindful of the following. That Social Security allows for you to save up to $100,000 in your ABLE account. Anything above that does start counting towards the $2,000 asset limit, okay? Another piece that we want to make sure that you know about is that if you are using funds, and this is for the SSI beneficiary only, that if you're using funds in the account to pay for housing related expenses, and let's say that you move those funds out of the account and you put them in an external savings account, and then let's say you're going to pay rent from there, you want to make sure that you use those funds that same calendar month in which the funds were withdrawn. Otherwise, if those funds sit in that external account, it will be counted as a resource by Social Security, okay? So a tip to work around that piece is, instead of making that withdrawal and having it sit in that external account, you can request Stable to issue a check. So the funds doesn't actually sit somewhere, right? And can be counted as a resource. You are just issuing that check, and you don't have to worry about this piece, okay? And then this is a question that we get quite frequently. So let's say the SSI beneficiary who is working, if they are putting funds, their employment earnings funds, into the stable account, they're wanting to know if that'll help reduce the income amount that Social Security uses for determining eligibility, okay, for SSI benefits. Because again, Social Security looks at income and they look at assets. Well, the answer is no. An ABLE account, stable WVABLE, it shelters the individual's assets, their resources, okay? So once they put the funds in there, it's not counted against them, but it will not reduce the individual's income. We want to make sure folks know that piece as they're planning ahead, and of course utilizing their ABLE accounts on their behalf for the most benefit. As it relates to this $100,000 balance limit, no, this does not apply for individuals receiving Medicaid, SNAP, or HUD. They do not have this $100,000 cap. It's only for individuals who are receiving SSI or who want to apply for SSI in the future. We're also often asked what happens to the funds when the beneficiary passes. So first of all, there is a feature that was added in the stable account platform enrollment in 2023. When you're doing the enrollment, the system is going to ask, do you want to designate a successor beneficiary? But it's limited to the ABLE eligible sibling. So if the beneficiary has a sibling that has a disability that qualifies for ABLE, okay, at the time of enrollment or any time during the life of the beneficiary, you can designate that sibling to be the beneficiary upon passing of the account owner, okay? Otherwise, when the beneficiary passes, first of all, we always say, if they have the capacity to, sign off on a will, that's always best practice, right? Because it helps to designate what happens to those funds, not just in their ABLE account, but any other assets that they may have. But what's going to happen is, the account will pass to the account holder's estate, okay? And any outstanding qualified disability expenses will be paid out first. The account will go through probate, okay? And then after probate, whatever is left in the account, if they have a will, the will designate what happens to those funds. If they don't have a will, then state code it's included in state code how those funds and assets are allocated, from to the heirs of that individual. Okay, so know too, that when the beneficiary passes, that funeral and burial expenses are also considered a qualified disability expense. And then for whoever the estate administrator is, if it's not the ALR, they will want to reach out to Stable Account customer service to have access to take over the account. There'll be some specific documents that they'll need to submit, but there is a process in place for them to then take over the account. Okay. And then effective 2019, this is one of the protections that our West Virginia legislature put in place. Know that when the beneficiary passes, there cannot be a West Virginia Medicaid clawback on their WVABLE stable account. This is a big concern that families have. This is also a protection for West Virginia beneficiaries that own a WVABLE stable account. This is not for the West Virginia beneficiary that owns another national account. This is what our legislature put in place specifically for WVABLE account owners. So we want to make sure people know this piece. Now, the only exception is if the beneficiary, when they pass, they're 55 or older, and they were living in a nursing home or they were receiving community-based waiver services, okay? Then this is a separate, okay? This is the West Virginia Estate Recovery Program that then kicks in. However, where stable accounts are better protected than any other standard, external account, is that funds, in the account can be used for any outstanding qualified disability expenses, okay? And then including funeral burial. And then whatever is left over, then the West Virginia Estate Recovery could kick in. So more information about the West Virginia Estate Recovery is included at the WVEstateRecovery.com. I believe that's the website. You can simply do a Google search. But at the core of this slide, the takeaway is anybody under 55 that passes, there is not a West Virginia Medicaid clawback for them to recoup the expenses that they paid out on behalf of the beneficiary. That is a huge benefit for WVABLE accounts and the account beneficiaries and their families. Now, how much does it cost to own a stable account? This is the part two that I'm really excited to share. In that stable account program, as of January 1, they have eliminated the account maintenance fee. So it used to be, as of July last year, $20 annually. Before that, it was $27. I will tell you at the very beginning of stable account, it was $5 a month. Okay. So what this is reflective is that stable account platform, the program itself has grown, and it's growing in account numbers, it's growing in assets under management. And so they have been in a position in which they can now eliminate this monthly account maintenance fee. So we're super excited about this. This is going to, allow families to not worry about, that monthly maintenance fee. It just allows them to really focus on savings, investing. The only other fee that is associated with owning a stable account is the asset-based fee. And those are between 0.19 and 0.33% on the earnings portion, okay? Now, during the enrollment, you're going to be asked if you want paper statements. They do charge a fee for mailing paper statements. That is now $20 a year, okay? $5 a quarter. You can mitigate that by just electing to receive electronic statements, in which those are emailed to you and available within the stable account platform. There's other fees that can absolutely be, avoided. If you're mailing a check for contribution and that check has insufficient funds, there's fees for that. So those type of fees that can totally be avoided. But as it relates to owning a stable account, just that account maintenance fee, there is no longer a fee as of January 1. So we are very excited about that. When we talked earlier about, the special needs trust, the takeaway to this slide is to know that there are benefits of each, the stable account benefits and then the special needs trust. But they work really well together on behalf of the beneficiary. With the trust, you can make unlimited amount of cash contributions. You can put non-cash assets in a trust. However, the limitation is access to your funds, the cost of establishing a trust, and that you can't make withdrawals to pay for housing. However, you can move funds from a trust into a stable account. Once there, you can use it for housing. You have broader spending power. You have access to your funds at any time. You have a state tax deduction for contributions made into the stable WVABLE account. There's no federal or state income tax on the earnings in a stable account. And the stable account can be established, administered, and owned by the individual with a disability. So you have some freedoms there, right? But the takeaway here is they work really well together for individuals that are in a circumstance in which they have way more than $20,000 a year to shelter, right? They want to consider options with a special needs trust, but know that the trust and the stable account works great together. Customer service information. If you have questions directly related to your stable account, they have a 1-800 customer service number. Okay, so I don't have access to the accounts, but Stable does. So if you have to create or something, you have to update your login information or your phone number or anything along those lines, or you want to check your account balance, you'll want to contact the Stable program customer service at 1-800. If you have any of our merchandise items, we work really hard to have contact information included. Anytime you see 1-800 number, that's always going to be Stable. If you see a 304 number, that will always come to me at the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office and the WVABLE program. Any questions at all that you have, any assistance that you need, I'm more than happy to help. If you get my voicemail, please leave a message and I will call you back. This wvable@wvsto.com email address also comes to me directly. And of course, we have our website at wvable.com. My contact information, if you want to invite WVABLE for a presentation, or if there is an upcoming event in which you want WVABLE to, be there with an exhibit table to share program information, or you want printed materials to share, or you have questions about anything that we've talked about today, absolutely reach out to me. We also work hard in that we are providing resources to ensure that you stay connected with WVABLE. So we offer these monthly webinars every month. So make sure that you share that with your friends. We also offer on-demand webinars. So this recording today will be available for viewing by the public. And then we do monthly newsletters. So some of you may have learned about today's webinar via our newsletter that we send out. Make sure that you are subscribing to that monthly. It allows you to stay on top of WVABLE updates, upcoming events, events that are being hosted by national ABLE partners that are also valuable resources for folks to learn from. And then we do have program brochures, including a trifold brochure that is excellent to share and to summarize program benefits. And then we do have a Facebook page. And we welcome you to follow us. If you have an additional monitor or a smartphone, you can go to Facebook and find us at WVABLE. We are very intentional in those posts that they're educational in nature. It is a great way to help us spread the word about WVABLE. We want to make sure, and our mission is to ensure that individuals who are eligible, especially now with this expansion of the eligibility criteria, they know that this program exists, that it's available to them to start, actually being able to start saving above that $2,000 mark, and then receive all the rest of the benefits of the tax piece and the features that make sharing, or that make using the accounts, and of course saving easier and more efficient. One last thing, and I'm sorry that I have went over just a tad. We are celebrating our 8th anniversary at the Capitol next Thursday as part of Disability Advocacy Day and Fair Shake Initiative. State Treasurer Larry Pack will be providing remarks at the 9:30 a.m. rally, and then we will be celebrating upstairs in the upper rotunda with cupcakes. So we invite you to join us, and we are excited to share the progress that's been made to help individuals with disabilities to save and just starting to achieve that financial independence.